I've been thinking for some time now. I wanted to maybe start or continue this eminent YouTube Vaishnava series by diving a little bit into Nectar of Devotion. What do you think about that? Well, of course, the verse from Rupa Goswami that first comes to my mind when I think of Nectar Devotion is this ādau, śraddhā, tataḥ, sādhu-saṅgo'tha, bhajana-kriyā, tato'nartha-nivṛttiḥ, syāt, niṣṭhā, rucis. It describes the, as many of us know, the progress of bhakti, or how bhakti develops. Prabhupada, he often described the Nectar Devotion as a science of bhakti. Therefore I think this verse is rather appropriate because it very scientifically describes how bhakti develops. Now I'm starting to sound all authority and senior Vaishnava talking here, important things. I'm going to tell you where things are at. But really, when Prabhupada, I think, heard that, at least that when he wrote the Nectar of Devotion and lectured on the Nectar of Devotion, he often reminded his students that you don't understand this. But I have to give it anyway, and maybe in the future you'll understand that this is advanced. Of course, then we want to be advanced, so we study the Nectar of Devotion and we learn it very well, and then we are advanced. But if we just skip that advanced and non-advanced and all that kind of stuff for a little while and look at this more from our own practical experience, then I think that to me that seems to be more what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted us to do this ourselves, our own pace, for real, and not just sit and talk about it. He said, of course, you should read my books, but then we should also, of course, take them to heart and let them become or guide our own reality. So it's not just a reality that exists on vyasasans or lecture days. Now I think this verse is one of those that really we could and should be able to identify with. That first there is this śraddhā, the faith. I think this might be something, and of course that one is of different levels, and we can all get all scientific about it. I found one very interesting description of the 3 stages of conviction, you could say, because I think faith, to me it sounds very Christian, the way I grew up with Christianity, that you believe in God, which means that the option is there that maybe there is no God, and you have faith, and they even call it faith. The whole religion is a faith, but I think this śraddhā is not really about that. It may be initially, but anyway, Bhaktivinode, I found an interesting description of this. The Bhaktivinode Thakura gave, I didn't read so many books except for Prabhupada's books, to be honest, but sometimes I download a PDF or so, and I have one, Krishna Samhita, I think it is, by Bhaktivinode Thakura, and it's a fascinating book because he's talking in a very different language, very different metaphors, and You have to read it in order to understand what I'm talking about, but there he speaks about these, we have this idea of, or a concept of kanishṭha-adhikari, madhyama-adhikari and uttama-adhikari. So it seems that there's something like those that he describes there. He says that there is this beginner devotee who has faith. It's a faith that can be very, intense or motivating, and can make that person very faithful in the service of Krishna. But it's neophyte faith. It's not based on knowledge. It can be broken. It's based on sentiment. You come to the movement like this, you come to the Hare Krishna movement or some other movement, and I'm just looking at a documentary from Swedish television. It's called, I think in English it will be The Church of Evil, and it's about a couple in the United States, of course, I think Los Angeles or something, and they decide, let's start a church, and they do it the real traditional cult way, and they become, of course, millionaires, and they have this farm or whatever where they have hundreds, I think, of young people working for free without any salary, and all the salary goes to that couple, and I mean it's a hilarious thing. So of course then they interview those followers, or who used to be followers, and we see the same story repeating over and over again. Different groups, different cults, different sects, where people are drawn in, they are pulled in, generally by some charismatic preaching, because there this lady, she was really charismatic. So she was like, yeah, of course it was burn in hell if you don't do this, but really turbo maximum output. So they got a few followers, and generally they kind of targeted young, that's how they started, young bewildered hippies who were running around on the streets, and they were drugged out, and they just took them and brought them in, and they kind of became members in that way, and dedicated. I think they even had to almost sell their souls to that group anyway. So that is the faith. I mean, we have seen similar situations in the Krishna consciousness movement. People join out of that sentiment, and then sometimes they become disappointed, sometimes others become disappointed because they didn't understand very much what they were doing. Now Bhaktivinode makes an interesting point. I think that in this little program here, I'm going to keep it short, so I'm only going to talk about this word śraddhā. And I guess I'm going to be going with this verse maybe for a long time. When I did my Radio Krishna series on the Bhagavatam, I thought I should go through the entire Bhagavatam, because a god brother of mine did the Bhagavad Gita, so I thought, okay, I'm going to do the big thing here, which ended up in 10 programs on the first verse of the Bhagavatam. And I was really happy about that, because when I started getting into that first verse, it appeared to me that this first verse embodies the entire Bhagavatam in a nutshell. Even the first word, actually. So it was an interesting concept. And afterwards I realized that Srila Goswami had done the same thing, written an entire book or something about the first verse of the Bhagavatam. So I was not completely out there. Anyway, so maybe this will end up being serious about that single verse in the Nectar of Devotion or whatever I feel like doing. So yeah, Bhaktivinode makes an interesting point back to the three levels of faith or conviction. The second one, which I would believe could be equivalent to madhyamadikari, he says that is characterized by doubt. In other words, those people are intelligent and they are asking questions and they are doubting, they're questioning, they are really checking it out, checking the facts, and they are not convinced just because somebody is speaking sweetly or threatening with hell or something like that, or promising you that you will become rich if you serve God or serve them. So they want more in order to be convinced. So and I think it was interesting that Bhaktivinode used that word doubt, because I know that in the old days, at least, when we were preaching and lecturing and all that, doubt was something bad. It was something unwanted. You're doubting, huh? And I even saw people being thrown out of the temple because they had too many doubts. So it was a little surprising that Bhaktivinode was speaking like that. But then I realized, he said that this is the characteristic of intellectuals. They are difficult to convince. They will ask uncomfortable questions. Sometimes to you, of course, stupid questions. But once they become convinced and once they get their questions answered, I'm basically quoting Bhaktivinode here, they will become very convinced. Their faith will become very strong, and more than just faith, because that's what really scientific attitude or research means. So they will take this in a very scientific way, which means you need to show me proof here. Otherwise, I won't accept this. I won't accept you or anyone else just because you say that person is a guru or whatever. I accept you when you have convinced me, when you have answered my questions and laid my doubts to rest. And of course, I think that's quite reasonable. But then I realized that we had it a bit backwards. I don't know how it is now, and there is more academia involved. The devotees have more turned into that world, so I cannot say much about now. But I mean, in the old days, we almost despised intellectuals. And especially when there were, I can only speak from my own experience here. I've been on both sides of it, getting the club in my head when I asked the wrong questions, which I then questioned, are there any wrong questions actually? For those of you who were in the old days, you might remember me getting the club over and over again. And I thought about that years later, and I actually spoke to Hrishikesh Maharaj, because he's the one who had the club in his hand after the Maharaj era. And I felt that actually he was wrong by doing that. And he admitted that. He actually apologized. I'm not sure if he did that out of politeness or because he actually agreed with me. But I don't think there are the wrong questions. You might say somebody asks a speculative question. But I think the problem is if the answer is speculative, how can a question be speculative? So I think that sometimes, to be really frank here, one from the Vyasa-san or whatever found it more convenient to dodge questions by pointing back at the person who asked the question and making them look stupid for asking such a stupid question, but the real fact may have been that they couldn't answer the question. Which is also a bit of a cheating propensity, so we should be careful with that. But then I think that it can be taken just as an old guy sitting and criticizing, but I think it's an important point, because that kind of attitude, whether you welcome doubts and tricky questions and intellectual attitude, or you reject it or push it away, you don't want to have anything to do with it, it makes all the difference in the world what kind of people your organization will consist of course. So we rather had the idea that a person who is not intellectual, just have simple faith, is a more advanced devotee like that. But I think that there was a mistake there. But that's another thing. So Bhaktivinode, he speaks about that. So in other words, he turned very much to intellectuals. And to the extent that this Krishna Samhita, he's breaking up the standard language and standard Indian Hindu way of describing things, and he's more talking as if he was talking to intellectuals, academics. So it's interesting to see that, and some may say that, oh, he's just cloaking the knowledge in such a way. Yeah, of course, in a way, but we should therefore not speculate and think that he is telling something that is not true. He wouldn't do that, of course. A Vaishnava wouldn't say things that are not true just to get followers or whatever. And then, of course, when he's talking about the third level, which I guess corresponds to or refers to the Uttamadhikari, and that is a person who is even beyond that. There's no more doubt anymore. And what happens then is that when you don't have any doubts anymore about Krishna, then you are able to surrender to Krishna. And what surrender actually means is also one thing that I want to talk about in one of these little videos. But what I really would say is that when you have no more doubts, and that means you're fully convinced that Krishna exists, first of all, and that Krishna is always with you, and that Krishna is always ready to help you, and you just go, hey Govindana, I'm yours, you do with me as you like, and please just use me as a tool, as your servant, as an instrument. Now that is surrender. Sometimes we used it in other ways. Surrender Prabhu and wash those pots. But seriously, surrender is a beautiful thing, because it means that we invite Krishna. We take hold of Krishna, we hold on to Krishna, and we have that complete security and trust and safety in doing so. And as we do, then Krishna is responding. You may have that example, I think most of us have, that when we do that, even if it's just temporarily, someday when we chanted our rounds very well, that we can just feel that Krishna taking over and just leading us and inspiring us and making us float through our day, and everything is just wonderful. And Prabhupada emphasizes this many times in these lectures on the Nectar of Devotion, that the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness is that everyone should be very happy, because at that point you are simply very happy. You're not serving Krishna in a heavy, frustrated, or now we have to do this and that, and but you do it, you're just happy by that serving Krishna. And we all, I think, had that experience too, but we may have had the other one also. This is really what I see the Nectar of Devotion to be. It's there to help us to come to that next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And we should allow ourselves to recognize those in ourselves, because sometimes devotees, they are simply taking that kind of lowest position. I'm lower than the low, and the worm in the stool, and all of that, and my guru is great, but I am never going to be like that. But actually what we are supposed to be is like that, because it's not really like there, far up there somewhere in some remote part of the universe where the pure devotees are. This is actually our constitutional nature. It's our position. It's just normal life. When we are back home, back to Godhead, I hope we all still believe that that's what it's all about. Then I don't think we sit there and say to each other now, hey, you're a very advanced devotee here, you're Uttama Adhikari. You're just having a good time with Krishna. And we are back to being who we are, rather than this, who we are not. So it's basically just a matter of removing that which we are not, which we of course do by connecting back to Krishna in devotion, love and devotion. So I don't know if this is going to be useful, but little experiment. So thank you very much for watching. Hare Krishna.